So Baldur's Gate 3 is doing really, really well in terms of the number of players that are playing the game, in terms of the quality of the game. Larian Studios have apparently done an amazing job with the game. Everyone seems to agree on that. Well, not everyone, because there are some people who are picking apart various controversies that came before the game was released and now that the game is released, which remarkably is very similar to what happened with Final Fantasy 16, which calls into question, is the video games press actually doing its job? Hi, I'm Rob.
And hi, I'm hot from too many lights being on me, but for the sake of giving myself a name, I'm also Rob.
Hello, also Rob.
Yeah, also Rob.
Yes, welcome back to the Geek Show. We are today talking about, well, video games press in a sense, because there's been a lot of coverage of games like Final Fantasy 16, Baldur's Gate 3, and various other titles, some of which have led to some very, very questionable titles and articles from what is apparently, allegedly, the video games press. Now,
Yeah.
yeah, I was about to say this is going to be a very, very touchy subject because you and I both have very, very specific opinions about the video games press as it is right now.
Yeah. None of them are particularly positive, and if you're a member of the video game press and you happen upon this video, I don't care. Take it to Twitter and moan about it. Bloody hell.
Yeah. Well, it's not Twitter now, it's X.
Nobody calls it X. Only
I
when
know.
they're being facetious.
I know, exactly.
Which you were, yes. And my issue, though, in particular, I mean, what the first issue before Final Fantasy, before Baldur's Gate, before anything, is just what a member of the press does. A member of the press traditionally reports upon stories that happen.
Yeah,
It's either through just reacting to what is like so big it's impossible to ignore, and in which case they just turn up and present their opinion. No, you don't even present their opinion. You just sort of report the facts as is.
yeah,
Um, or they get press releases and make stories out of that and interview people. I'm reducing it to a very large extent because there's so much more to do, but it's a very nuanced industry. The industry that the press works in for like movies or TV or sports or whatever sort of thing. Consumers or people will be interested in.
yeah,
The video game industry, press is such a bastardized term that it doesn't mean anything.
yeah,
Um, they're just post PR releases. Because as I mentioned on a few of these episodes, we get the very same press releases. We don't release them because where's the added value there?
yeah,
But it's also other factors as well. If a member of another part of the press had commentary as insistent as they do in the video game industry, as we learnt with Gary Lineker, they'd be fired, essentially,
yeah,
or in a great deal of trouble. The video game industry also doesn't know whether somebody's a journalist or a reviewer, and it just sort of melds them into one, which
yeah,
makes them this sort of, like I said, a bastardized form of neither. So it's in a strict sort of job description sense, a video game journalist or a video game member of the video game press doesn't make any sense as sort of a title, and because of that, well, the entire trade is full of frauds and charlatans.
yeah.
Honestly,
I let's start with an early, an earlier controversy, the Final Fantasy 16 one. Yeah.
there's an earlier one than that.
Oh yeah, there was an early one
I
than
just
that.
want to sort of bring this up, but it just shows how double standards are. There's a YouTuber who's not particularly nice, not particularly pleasant. He's called The Quartering.
Yeah,
I think that's the name of the channel.
yeah, that was him. Yeah,
There was a name of the I can't remember the name. It was some review, some long game, and the reviewer for IGN hadn't reviewed it all properly, hadn't
Yeah,
played the full game, and the quartering, which is a legitimate complaint, a legitimate query. If you're going to review a game, play it to completion.
yeah,
And in this case, that reviewer for IGN hadn't. All
yeah.
the
Okay.
reviewers for IGN accused the quartering of bullying, and what did they do when they accused him of bullying? Well, they just absolutely dogpiled on him.
Yeah, I
Because,
remember that.
as I mentioned on previous videos, there is this little bubble in San Francisco, which is just sort of them against the world, which when you put that with an awful lot of what I mentioned earlier about the job just not meaning anything anymore, it's effectively a bunch of influencers.
See, I would love for them to come to the north of England and try that stuff around here because someone would headbutt them.
Yeah. Even the south of England, the west of
Yeah,
England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, you name it, the
yeah,
UK.
exactly.
They'd give them as
Someone would
good as
just
they
say,
got.
"What the hell are you on about?" and then give them a good kicking.
Yeah.
Um,
But that's my thing. That's one story that I think stood
yeah,
out for me as far as sort of the responsibility and role of the video game press. But again, like you say, the Final Fantasy 16 thing is a bit more contemporary.
yeah, it's a bit more contemporary. I mean, first there was the whole thing about the ethnicities, which we've already gone over.
But just to
Um,
remind you, it's that the slaves aren't the right skin colour.
yeah,
And the press was really behind that one, the video games press.
yeah.
Not
Oh,
realising your racism's showing a bit there, mate.
yeah. I
You
know.
know?
It's just, oh, yeah. Brown apparently isn't a dark enough skin color for for a game.
Yeah.
Just like,
Upsy.
oh, and
Upsy.
your slaves aren't dark enough. They're very pale. Your slaves.
Upsy pupsy.
Yeah, I know. Because apparently white people can't be slaves.
Yeah, but watch that video. There'll be a link up in the top corner where you
Yes,
can
yes,
catch
they
that
will.
one.
But the other end of that controversy has to do with Square Enix itself and what people are saying about the sales of Final Fantasy 16 as a game. Because it didn't sell as well as Square Enix hoped. They had basically, I'm assuming it's their higher tier that they didn't hit, which is fine, okay? They've obviously hit their lower and medium levels that they want to achieve. They didn't hit the higher tier. And one of the reasons for that they said was because of the limited install base of the PlayStation 5. It hasn't been as big an uptake because of the pandemic and other things as the PlayStation 4. When Final Fantasy 15 came out,
And the cost of living crisis, which
yeah,
in this country especially is hitting mega ultra
yeah,
3 fists deep wide.
exactly. Now, if you compare it to when Final Fantasy 15 came out,
Yeah.
it sold what 3.5, 4 million copies within a few weeks. Final
Yeah.
Fantasy 16 has sold about 3 million on a much smaller install base than the PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
Right? But here's the thing: everyone's looking at that and going, "Oh, Square Enix is obviously in trouble. The game is obviously a flop because Square Enix have said they're disappointed that they haven't hit their higher sales target."
Yeah.
Disappointed you haven't hit your higher sales target does not mean the game is a flop.
Here's the thing: it goes back to what I was saying about video game press being largely influencers to get that sentence out properly.
Yeah,
They don't know what business language is. They react emotionally so often, and there's nothing emotional about that statement that Square Enix said. Every company has sales targets that are hit, lower level sales targets, higher level sales targets.
exactly.
It's how they manage their functions, they manage their finances, they manage their planning for the future.
Yeah, and I mean, the fairest take I've seen on this whole thing is Jesse Cox, who actually went out of his way to explain, look, they have this and they have this and they have this. They're not saying the game, okay, to most people, it might look like they're saying the game's a failure, but you have to put it in the context of this is how it is. And he was right. One of the things he mentioned was this is a very slim year in terms of releases for Square Enix. They sold off their European stuff. They're not really releasing much on the small scale in terms of games. Harvestella came out last year, which turned into a big sleeper hit for them. But they don't really have much coming out on mobile. They don't really have much
Yeah.
coming out in general this year.
And
The
also,
next, yeah,
adding to that, before you get to the next year, with the success of their online RPG, which had sales stretch for years and years,
exactly.
their learns a lesson that I think a lot of video game publishers have yet totally skipped on.
Yeah,
It's not about the first week.
yeah,
And use the business term. Sales are a long tail thing.
yeah. And this is
Sales
what,
continue for years and years, so people will continue to pick this up. So to say 2 months in, it's been a failure, that is the sort of hot-headed, out of touch, don't understand the business world terms that you get in the video game press. Whereas the actual video game industry said, didn't have high sales targets. That's it.
but it has a long tail. And you know what? That's what Jesse Cox has said. That's what Bellular said. That's what a few other people have said, right? But then you look at the headlines that people were putting out with regards to this. Square Enix's stock prices tank because of Final Fantasy 16. You're like, I'm sorry, but what? Their share prices go up and down. Share prices fluctuate all of the time. And when they've done their earnings call, whether it's the mid-year or quarterly earnings call.
Did you say earnings squall there?
Earnings call.
It sounded like you said squall, but okay, I'll let you off.
It wasn't a sneaky Final Fantasy VIII joke, don't worry. I saw what you were trying to do there. But when you're doing your earnings calls and whatever announcements you make there, that will affect your share price because people will look at that. Investors will look at that. But what doesn't help is when you have uneducated press, and I'm going to call you uneducated because it's obvious you don't know business language. Uneducated press jumping on the bandwagon, doing clickbaity titles, like saying their share prices are tanking because of this game. Obviously, the game is a failure. The same
IGN, Kotaku, GameSpot.
Yeah. Which then causes investors who look at these scaremongery headlines going, oh shit, I have to sell my shares in this company.
Yeah, because the thing is here, if there were actually genuine press,
yeah,
they would just matter-of-fact report it. Just a story, no personal opinion, no personal bias.
Yeah.
But as we mentioned in this show's a previous iteration of this show, when it was called Impossible Mission, and it was just solely about video game stuff, we do other stuff now too. We talked about the horrendous PlayStation bias in the press. And if a press is going to be the press, it can't have any bias. It's got to be called down the middle. And I know there's many cases like the British political press isn't balanced. The American political press certainly ain't balanced. But more industry-led stuff tends to be.
Depends on the industry, though.
That's why I say tends. And the video game press, it's just PlayStation all the way. There's just no sense of nuance to that. It's just very, very pro PlayStation. And the fact that if your press is infected by tribalism, what the hell's the point in the press? Exactly.
I mean, just to give you an example, right? Just to give you an example of how bad it was for Square Enix. Some of the headlines. What was it? Square Enix's Final Fantasy 16 sales lead to where are we? Lead to stock price profit decline. That was Forbes.
Oh, right? I expect better from Forbes.
Exactly. I mean, that's Forbes coming out with that. Where are we? Final Fantasy 16 sales did not meet high expectations, says Square Enix president. Blames slow adoption of PS5. That was Eurogamer.
They're using the word blames as well. It's adding a emotion that just wasn't there.
Yeah, but this is the thing. The way that they use it, and Push Square had basically the same headline. Square Enix bafflingly backtracks on Final Fantasy 16 sales, blames slow PS5 adoption, publishers' high expectations not met. And they're basically saying that what they're saying now contradicts what they said last month when they said Final Fantasy 16 had extremely strong sales that had surpassed 3 million copies in under a week following its launch. Yeah. But now they're saying it didn't hit its high expectations and they're having a drop of 79% in profits this year. But what they don't do is explain why that 79% drop in profits has happened, which is the fact that they're not really releasing a lot this year.
Yeah, the fact that they don't tell the whole story,
Yeah,
it means that it leads people in certain directions, and if you're leading people in the certain directions
then you're not
by
press.
by not presenting the whole truth,
Yeah,
you're just a propaganda wing.
yeah, you're not press.
It's just that you're not press, you're a propaganda wing of some sort of whatever
Yeah,
pointless thing.
and following on from the Final Fantasy 16 stuff is now Baldur's Gate 3. Larian Studios have produced an amazing game.
Yeah.
And I will say yes, it's probably going to be game of the year.
That shocked a lot of people with how good it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, nobody
I
expected anything from it. What was the same? It was released the same way as some huge title, wasn't it? I can't remember what it
yeah,
was.
and it's destroyed it completely.
Yeah, and people say, "Oh, it's not going to sell very many." That other game, I can't remember what it was, is going to totally crush it.
The fact that you can't even remember what it is, and I can't remember what it is because everything's been about Baldur's Gate 3. And before the game came out, right, there was a tweet from a developer, which was a very fair tweet. And what they were saying, all the developer was saying was, manage your expectations. What Larian Studios have done is, remarkable, but that's not how video games work. We can't work the same way as them. They've basically developed in a specific way, in an anomalous way to the rest of the video games industry. We can't match that, right? That's all they were saying. We
Yeah.
can't match that. We have corporate executives who tell us what to do. It's
Oh,
our
yeah.
job's worth. We have to earn a living, so we have to do what they say. They pay our wages.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, every company operates in a different way,
Exactly.
and
And the
there's
majority of them are unfortunately corporate structures. They don't work like Larian.
because Larry ain't a huge company, so
Exactly. And, the head of Larian, he is, a diehard game playing person himself. He
yeah.
wants games to be made a certain way, and he is sticking to his guns with that. And yes, that's admirable, but that is still not the majority of the video games industry. But what happened was a bunch of people who call themselves journalists jumped on some of the hot takes that came from that tweet as a result of that tweet, hot takes that were partially misrepresenting and partially misunderstanding that tweet,
Yes.
and then dogpiled on, the gaming developers from other studios, saying, "Oh, this is the problem with AAA games. This is this. This is this. This is this." Like, no, the problem is the video games industry itself, and you are part of the problem if you are dogpiling like this.
Yeah, it's like comparing the latest indie film to come out with Sundance to the next Marvel movie.
Yeah,
They can't all operate in the same way.
yeah.
It's
The two basically, one of them is playing cricket, the other one's playing baseball.
You see, here's the problem again with the video game press. There's no certain nuance of scale or understanding of scale.
Yeah,
It's kind of a cardinal misunderstanding of what AAA means.
yeah,
And the video game press is full of people who just sort of conflate one thing to mean everything. Which, for me, it just speaks about the amount of juvenile people. I mean, I'm not talking down to people who are being young. Being young is everybody's it. It's fine. It's no
yeah,
problems there. But when you're in a position of authority and education to people who are trying to make an informed decision, you have to come across as authoritative. If you're making juvenile, ill-educated thoughts and making them public,
yeah.
it's again. I think the editors of these places are missing a ball. I hate to say it, but I think a lot of games journalists need bloody press training,
Yeah,
which is
and
ironic because they are the press.
yeah, I know, but and this I think is a very, very fundamental issue with video games journalism as it is right now. You have a lot of people who have started off being commentators, doing their YouTube videos, doing podcasts, stuff like that, with no
Yeah.
actual formal training, and they've moved on to become members of various press outlets, but they still had no formal training. They still don't know where the line is, and they still don't fully understand that there are certain things that you can do and say as a member of the press, but if you do or say the wrong thing, you're going to get your ass sued.
Well, put it this way. I'm going to talk around this because it's a personal example.
Yeah.
And I'm editor of our website now, so that means I
Yeah.
don't really write reviews that much anymore. However, when I did, there was one movie that I had to review, and
Yeah.
I had two movies on my cards, and I asked somebody, one of my writers over Twitter, which I probably shouldn't have done, but I was younger and I didn't really know how to work things,
Yeah.
whether they wanted to do one of these movies. And I said one of them was a bit daft, a bit rubbish. And the director of one of those movies, not the movie I was talking about, the daft movie I was talking about was some sort of 1970s, 80s sort of caper comedy, nothing of nothing. But because it was mentioned in the same note as a new movie,
Yeah.
the writer or director of that movie found it and told on me to the PR agents and made a big stink out of it.
Yeah.
Which taught me very, very quickly, everybody can find what you're putting on Twitter and social media. And everything that you put on social media, it's like a scientific reaction, isn't it? There's the reaction and an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful because every word that you put out there matters.
Yeah. And back when I was teaching people media criticism, one of the things that I always hammered into them was your job isn't to tell people what they like and don't like. Your job is to give them enough information so they can make an informed decision.
Yeah, and the
You can
video game.
you can add your own personal taste in there, but ultimately you have to stress that is your personal take.
There's a lot of people, there's a lot of hotheads in games press.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to be told by you or someone else, or that this game is rubbish when I might enjoy it, I might not. But that's my decision to make. That's my personal bias that has to come into play there, not yours.
Yeah. Yeah, but
And this is the thing.
I honestly think we're at this for a long time. There's many reasons why the video game press has got absolutely destroyed as far as its credibility. Most notably is the suggestion that their reviews don't mean anything. That the value of their criticism is just so how can I word this? Vacuous.
Well, doesn't that then tie into what I've literally just said?
Oh no, it's sort of for sale.
Yeah.
That people make jokes and memes about the credibility of their reviews, so they just don't trust it.
And it was one of the things
which, again, a big wing of the video game press is basically rendered moot because a big number of the people who could potentially read them don't trust a single word they're saying.
Exactly. It's one of the things that I said to you years ago, back when we first started down this road. And I said to you, we don't listen to what anyone else says. They can say, oh, please do a positive review. But we put our feet down. We put our line in the sand and say, we will do the review our way. And we will put out our opinion. If you don't like it, then that's tough.
The only thing that I, and anything that comes under my sort of stewardship practices, is one simple thing. One simple standard. Be fair.
Yeah.
That's it.
And to add to that, a mantra that I've hammered into people I've taught is find the good in the bad and the bad in the good. Yeah. Be fair. Be fair is second. Well, is in addition to that.
It's sort of like a different phrasing, isn't it?
Yes and no. I mean, you can be fair, but you can also be bland and fair.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
And then it just, your review is fair, but also meaningless.
Yeah, because I don't know about yourself, and I imagine it's true for a lot of people, but I can't remember the last time I ever read a video game review.
Yeah.
Cared.
Yeah. I mean, I years ago, I did philosophy of science. Yeah, I know it seems irrelevant, but there was a thing that I found there. Yeah, I know. Just hear me out.
You doofus.
It was a bullshit course at university that I did for a year, and I basically did it because I thought, ooh, philosophy of science. I like science. I do read a bit of philosophy every now and then, I'll see what it's all about. So, anyway, on this course, I learned about two philosophers of science, one called Karl Popper and the other one called Thomas Kuhn. And the main thing that I took away from there was that I have a very kind of Popperian mentality. The idea that Karl Popper had was anyone can prove something that they already believe to be right.
Confirmation bias.
Yeah, it's confirmation bias, which exists a lot in the video games industry. Okay? The true test of something is to take something you already believe to be true and right and test it to destruction. The more you fail, the truer it is, but you have to be the one pushing the boundaries of that. You have to be the one saying, what if I throw this at it? What if I throw this at it? It was all about scientific revolution and how it happens. But that's basically how I think, which is why I say find the good in the bad, or find the good in what you hate and the bad in what you love, to give it its complete phrasing.
Yeah.
Because if you can find the bad in what you love, then you're being fair.
Yeah, and there's nothing fair in the video game press. It's just too emotional.
Yeah.
And it seems to be run by fans rather than professionals.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. One of the misconceptions that's come from the video games press, and this is just how stupid the situation's got with Baldur's Gate 3, right? Because of how the video games press has behaved with it, people seem to think that developers from other studios are now going to sue Larian Studios for making a good game.
That is some once-in-a-lifetime level mental gymnastics there.
Yeah, I know. It's really weird that people think that, but that is a result of how badly the video games press has reported on the whole thing with Baldur's Gate 3 and how much they've jumped on the bandwagon of hot takes.
And here's another thing, just on that hot takes bit.
Yeah.
When the press talk a certain way, it emboldens people who aren't from that world to talk in the same way.
Yeah.
I hate to take it in a political way, but when a prime minister talks, or a foreign minister, or home minister, whatever it is, talks about immigrants as an invasion, as a blight, as stop the boat, as all of these sort of invasion, all of these sort of negative words and negative connotations, it emboldens people to talk in a similar way.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
So it's the same is true with video game press as well. With the press talking like that, it emboldens the consumer to be exactly the same ill-informed, hot-headed, hot take having, well, I won't call them idiots because they're being misled, but yes, all of that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. What you've just said is a description of exactly what happened with this situation. It literally is exactly this situation that you've encapsulated there. Let me explain, right? So, how did it come about, Larian Studios, this idea that Larian Studios is getting sued? So, apparently, back towards the beginning of August, a TikTok video came out that was claiming some big players in the video games industry, the likes of Activision, Blizzard, Ubisoft, Electronic Arts, were going to sue Larian Studios for $100 billion because Larian Studios had unfairly raised the expectations of gamers to an unreasonable level by making Baldur's Gate 3.
He said
and
it right.
People
it's
took that video seriously.
$100 billion.
Yeah, but the thing is, people took that seriously. People actually believed that.
It's the internet is a mistake in a lot of ways, but the fact that it's democratized the idea of press and it's allowed anybody to be it means that there's a lot of inaccurate. I mean, it's that thing, isn't it, that they always say, find your sources. And this is the sort of thing, it's just there's so many people who are just blowing shit out their ass and everybody else has to, like, breathe in the smell.
Yeah, here's the question, right? So Larian Studios have made Baldur's Gate 3, and it's changed the layout of video games. It's been a game changer in terms of video game releases. So where is this bullshit that, oh, apparently other publishers are going to sue Larian Studios come from? Nobody sued CD Projekt Red when Witcher 3 came out, did they?
Trade and
Nobody
standards. Yeah.
sued. Nobody sued Nintendo when they released the Switch. You're changing gamers' expectations. All gamers are going to... I mean, can you imagine when the Switch came out? A mobile console that could basically hook up to a TV, everything like that, yeah?
Yeah.
Nobody had seen anything like that.
No, he didn't.
Did Sony or Microsoft turn around and go, oh, we're going to sue you. You've changed gamers' expectations.
Well, Jim Ryan probably would.
Yeah,
Prick.
but, you know, we have a video about him anyway, so...
It's a callback, Rob. It's a
I know.
callback.
I don't want to go into it. That's why I was saying we have a video about him.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the thing. This is just how much of a problem the bad reporting in video games is becoming. That you have these hot takes, these basically false takes that are being put out on TikTok and on Instagram and on Twitter and on various other social media outlets, and people are listening to them.
Yeah.
Because they think these people are informed. When these people aren't informed, these people are basically just following what the video games press is effectively allowing them to do by not calling them out and not calling themselves out. I don't see anyone holding the video games press to account.
No,
Or rather, I do, but you don't see them because everyone ignores them in the industry. Everyone from publishers to the press to developers.
Say if we were like a legitimate video game channel, we're not. We're kind of a cross pop culture one.
Yeah.
But if we were of like a big stature in the video game industry, if we're making a video like this being so incredibly critical of video game press, we'd be so blackballed.
I don't care.
Oh my god, we'd be blackballed. And honestly, I don't care about that. I'm just saying that's how it is. It's so petty.
No, I know.
Defensive.
It is so petty, and they're easily offended. But at the end of the day, I still don't care. You know, our job as a press outlet, and I have been a journalist in another life, and this was hammered into me. My job is not to make you happy. My job is to report on the facts.
Yeah.
It's not to make myself happy, not to make you happy, not to make anyone else happy. My job is to tell you what is going on, the truth of things. And if you can't do that, get the fuck out.
I have the faith. Honestly, the video game. I think it's this last 5-6 years, give or take.
Yeah.
The video game press has really gone down the shits.
Yeah.
Before that, it wasn't great, but it was solid and it was dependable.
This is how bad it is. Kotaku, they apparently now, as far as I understand it, Kotaku don't have a relationship with Nintendo.
Because of the things that they said.
Yeah.
And
this is only going to happen more and more. I am wondering now, because of all the stuff that's been said in various press outlets about Baldur's Gate 3 and various accusations made that from, you know, various press outlets about what this dev said or that publisher said or whoever, right? I am wondering how many bridges have been burned.
Yeah.
Because there is a reckoning coming for the video games press that they don't see. Because right now, just like the video games industry itself, most of the video games press is unregulated. They're covered by the broader press guidelines, but people just look at it like, oh, it's just a, you know, they're covering like a weird media format. We don't really need to worry about them. It's not very political. It's not very, you know, they don't really talk about any social issues or anything like that. So they're not really interested.
The thing is that a lot of them tend to be quite left-leaning.
Yeah.
And the tendencies they have, well, we went through them.
Yeah. And you can have, the thing is, leaning too far one way or another, whether it's left or right, you know, it ends up being very, very destructive.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say problematic or anything like that. I'm just going to give it a hard line. It is destructive. It's not constructive in any way.
I'm saying this as an absolute socialist, which I am.
Yeah.
And a Republican.
Yeah.
Screw the Royals. But yeah,
Every chance he gets. Every chance he gets.
going too far either way is just bad. Very
Yeah.
general. Any a
I,
country, a company, an industry, a person. It's just, yeah.
the thing is, there are so many stories and there's so much history that backs up all of what all of that. There's so many things where you say, okay, yeah, this is this is a good leader, but too good to the point at which they start executing so-called heretics.
Yeah, because look at just to go back to that, I think the reason why the Cyberpunk 2077 was such a massive catastrophic backfire,
Yeah,
Press did it.
yeah,
All that CD Projekt Red did was promote their game and
yeah.
put their game out,
And the press raised the hype levels.
and did it way too much.
And again, we come back to this thing:
And it
report the
bit
facts.
and it bit CD Projekt Red very, very hard.
Yeah,
No blowback on the press.
like I
But
said,
the press did it.
you come back to that thing: report on the facts. And it is ultimately going to come down to various press outlets will face lawsuits because they've unfairly raised gamers' expectations about a specific game. That same argument will come back to haunt various press outlets.
And the reckoning is a coming, and it
Yeah.
can't come soon enough.
So, I think we've reached a natural stopping point there.
Usually I'd say, oh, we have to end on something more positive, but no, screw 'em. Don't deserve it.
Now, I will end it like this, right? Okay. If you are a member of the video games press,
And you're one of the good ones, I'm sorry.
well, there are good ones. Jason Schreier, for example.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I like him. I like it. I like the way he reports on stuff, and he tends to be very, very factual. I like some of the stuff. I like the stuff that Axios does, for example, as well. They tend to be a more fact-based outlet. There are various other outlets that I use who tend to be more fact-based. I used to use Games Industry a lot because I thought, okay, they're more fact-based, but then I found out they're also owned by the same company that owns Eurogamer and various others, and some of their reporting has gone downhill. The business side of stuff, still pretty solid on Games Industry. But when it comes to the other stuff, you can see there is a bias creeping in, which I'm not happy about. What I will say is video games outlets, video games press, they need to pull back a little bit. They need to stop fighting with influencers and start just being press. Be one or the other. You can either be an influencer or you can be press.
It's the same, they're trying to be reviewers and press, whereas reviewers and press are two separate things.
Exactly. I mean, if I read an article about a movie, if I read a movie review in The Guardian or somewhere like that, other newspapers are available.
Yes, they are.
But if I read a movie review in a newspaper, I tend to take it with a pinch of salt because that person, okay, they might be the movie critic for that newspaper, but that newspaper is not a movie-based newspaper. Its focus is not on that. And yes, maybe there's some takeaways I can take from that criticism, but I'll still go and watch Mark Kermode and see what he has to say.
Out of touch old man, that's what he have to say.
Yeah. But again,
yeah.
He's not the only person I would listen to. He's just another example of somebody who works for a bigger organization.
He doesn't.
Movie criticism. Does he not work for BBC anymore?
Independent.
Oh, I thought I saw him on BBC stuff.
Yeah, but his podcast and his show aren't on the BBC.
Oh, yeah, I know his podcast isn't on BBC.
Yeah.
But yeah, where was I? What point was I making?
Different perspectives.
The point is there's different perspectives, and only by looking at different perspectives can you find some kind of balance. Because nobody out there is doing their job as a media critic, not in video games. And I don't think in many other industries either, nobody's doing their job. Their job being, don't tell people what they like and don't like. Give them enough information for them to make the decision themselves.
But by that reckoning, the entire music review industry basically needs to be put out of its misery, because that's all
Well,
that is. But that's
I
another. That's a tease for an upcoming episode, rather
yeah,
than me opening the conversation up to something else.
yeah,
Because
and that's why I went, well,
that's what I said at the beginning of the show. Lights are making me warm, so I'm not pushing this longer than it needs to be.
no, don't push it any longer. I think that's basically it.
Yeah.
Anyway, let us know what you think about this angry little episode that we've put forward here. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? You know, we're not going to put up one of those chat things where we have strongly agree, strongly disagree, blah blah blah. Just leave us a comment down below. Let us know what your thoughts are. Don't shout at us too much because, again, we are coming at this from an angle that, you know, is kind of developed over years.
Yeah. And also, I know I don't know where Macedonia is. So what? I don't care. Just a response to an earlier comment.
that's been grating on you, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
the whole there's like wings of TikTok that goes on the basis that Americans don't know where anywhere is. So I'm taking solace in that fact.
Are you American now?
No, I'm not. No, never. But yeah, stuff that we've got going on. By the time this is live, we should have at least the first episode out of Uncut, which was formerly known as Director's Uncut.
Yeah.
The first director of season 3 was James Whale, who you'll probably better know as the guy who directed Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and The Invisible Man. Pop Screen is still going with Graham. I'm not all fair with his schedule, but he's always got some weird stuff going on, and he just passed his 100th episode.
Yeah.
On Patreon, I have it should be out by now, or not a million miles from kicking off, but a mini series on the found footage horror series from Spain, Rec. There's reviews on Red Dwarf, X-Files, Doctor Who, Asian movies that people haven't seen. All sorts going on over at Patreon. So check that out. We would appreciate it if you did, because it helps keep the lights on and it helps the quality of these videos just generally improve over time, because all the money that is invested into the Geek Show goes back into updating technology. So I guess you call it non-profit in that sort of terminology.
Yep.
So yeah, until next time, please do check out some of the other videos in the channel. And this has been The Geek Show, so we'll see you in the next one.